The president makes another pitch for his cash for Culker's plan, once again tying U.S. job growth to a clean energy economy. Crude oil markets are reflecting enthusiasm about the U.S. economy. Analyst Elliott Gu explains why he sees that as an encouraging sign. And state lawmakers are here kicking off a weekend of meetings at the D.C. Energy Council.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
And good afternoon, I'm Tyler Suiters in for Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for this Friday afternoon edition of the Energy Report. A short road trip for President Obama today on his clean energy jobs push. His drive from the White House to a software company in Arlington, Virginia took all of 9 minutes time. The president's destination, Power. This is a company that develops energy efficiency and smart grid software. President Obama touted the fact that Power has doubled its workforce since just last year. And he said that clean energy jobs like this will keep families from struggling and keep the economy from going under. The president also made sure to once again pitch his Cash for Culker's plan, the effort to incentivize energy efficiency improvements in U.S. homes.
And that's also why earlier this week I urged Congress to enact a new initiative we're calling Homestar that would offer homeowners rebates for making their homes more energy efficient. Rebates worth up to $1,500 for individual home upgrades and up to $3,000 for retrofitting their entire home. So if they're getting this good information from Power and they see that, boy, that drafty window is costing me a couple of $100 a year, they're now going to have an incentive to go to Home Depots or go to Lowe's to hire a certified contractor and make the changes that will ultimately pay for themselves, improve our environment, and improve our economy.
There is that tie between clean energy and the U.S. economy and job growth. If you'd like to hear more about the White House energy efficiency plan, we have President Obama's entire speech from Power today posted here on our website. In the wake of a positive U.S. employment report today, oil prices hit their highest level in almost a year and a half. Amid more positive signs for the U.S. economy, crude rose above $81 a barrel this morning. It eventually settled at $81.50 on the NYMEX this afternoon. Earlier today, I talked with our regular energy market analyst Elliott Gu about the climbing crude prices and what seems to be a closer tie between oil prices and the economy than what has been a tight connection between oil and the U.S. dollar.
It is more encouraging when you actually see actual fundamentals supporting commodities, because that's what's going to drive this thing longer term. You want to see more than oil being just simply a currency trade. And I think we're kind of seeing that. We're seeing some signs of a return of demand in the U.S., or at least a moderation, sort of flat year-over-year demand. I think we will see over the course of the year some demand come back. One sector to look at carefully there is the refiners. We've seen the refiners actually spike very, very sharply over the last couple of days.
Elliott and I also discussed what lies ahead for natural gas prices now that last year's record build has almost evaporated and storage levels are back along their usual 5-year average. Our entire conversation is here on cleanskies.com. The Energy Council kicked off its annual meeting today here in the nation's capital. The annual event brings together lawmakers and energy professionals from the U.S. and Canada as well, sharing ideas about energy policy. Among the keynote speakers today, Paul Bailey. He is Vice President of the American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity. He discussed about not counting coal out even if there is comprehensive climate legislation that passes through Congress. He says with current scrubber technology, coal can be made nearly as clean as natural gas when it comes to carbon emissions, especially in the newer plants.
I do think there's an economic and an energy security advantage to using coal. Coal as a fuel is about 1/4 the cost of natural gas. So coal has an economic advantage over gas. The organization I represent is not anti-natural gas. If it makes sense for consumers and for the economy, then we should be using the fuels that are affordable. Coal happens to be a lot more affordable right now than natural gas does.
Bailey also said that he expects older coal-fired power plants, those built in the 40s and 50s, to be shut down in the next 3 to 5 years because of new EPA regulations. There is now consensus from a federal advisory committee on Wind Turbine Guidelines. That group is issuing a set of draft recommendations to minimize the environmental impact of land-based wind farms. This afternoon, Interior Secretary Ken Salazar commended this 22-member team, saying he will now consider their recommendations as he asks the Fish and Wildlife Service to develop its own guidelines for evaluating wind energy development on both public and private lands. Now, among the highlights of the Advisory Committee's recommendations, a decision-making framework that guides all stages of wind energy development. Also, reliance on the best available science when it comes to assessing renewable energy projects and also their potential environmental impacts. Plus, use of landscape-scaled planning, one that recognizes the need to think long-term about protecting our nation's economic and natural resources. And also from Interior this afternoon, DOI says it will not list the sage grouse as an endangered species. This is what should be a boon for the wind, the oil, and the natural gas industries. Now, the sage grouse inhabits a number of western states, including Wyoming, which is a prime spot for natural gas development. Secretary Salazar says this listing is warranted, but in his words, it is precluded by higher priorities, that is, other species that are in greater danger. So the grouse will instead be classified among species that are merely candidates for federal protection. Also from the Obama administration, Stephen Chu is handing out more loan guarantees for renewable projects, or at least he's ready to hand out more. Today, the Energy Secretary announced a conditional loan guarantee of $117 million to Kahuku Wind Power. That money will help finance the construction and startup of a 30-megawatt wind project on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. Kahuku Wind has plans for a dozen 2.5-megawatt wind turbine generators right here on the point you see highlighted on the map. That plan includes battery energy storage systems for electrical load stability. The federal government is now planning a massive ramp-up in biofuels production, 36 billion gallons worth over the next 12 years. So what is that going to mean to business, to agriculture, and also to the environment? Attempting to answer that question will be the job of this panel from the National Academy of Science. The team meeting today in Washington, D.C. to hear testimony from interest groups and also from the government. Over the next 18 months, panel members will consider the effects of the federal Renewable Fuels Mandate and whether the controversial indirect land use theory should indeed be used to score biofuels as well. The panel also will investigate whether increased use of biofuels is causing food and fuel prices to rise.
We were asked to look at the economic and environmental impacts of increasing biofuels production. And so what the committee is looking at is basically trying to assess those aspects.
Certainly this is a very important study. This is basically a 2-year examination of all things biofuels. So a very critical study in terms of impacts on policy decisions moving forward. And really market decisions moving forward as well.
The NAS panel will also consider the effect of higher production on prices. Earlier today, the U.S. Department of Agriculture told the panel that a repeat of the price spike we saw back in 2008 in food prices is unlikely, although commodity prices, it says, will stay high because of the increased price of oil. The NAS will release its report sometime next summer. As we're winding up the work week here in Washington, we'll take a look at some of the events scheduled around the D.C. area on Monday. A big speech at 11 a.m. Eastern from EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson. She is speaking at the National Press Club in Northwest Washington, discussing EPA progress in 2009 and also the agency's priorities for 2010. And you can bet that GHG regulation will be discussed as well. Clean Skies News will be on hand covering that event. Also, 3:15 p.m. Eastern on Monday, the U.S. Energy Association and the U.S. Agency for International Development will hold a briefing at the Reagan Building on the current status of energy efficiency and sustainability programs overseas. And finally, beginning Monday and going throughout the week, Zero Week 2010 gets underway in Houston. It's a week-long conference presented by IHS Cambridge Energy Research Associates. It features conferences offering insight into the energy future. Clean Skies News' Margaret Ryan is on hand talking to the newsmakers there. You can catch her reports all week. And that is this Friday afternoon edition of the Energy Report. We're glad you're with us. You can reach our team here in Washington anytime at contact@cleanskies.com, or you can follow along with us throughout your day on Facebook and Twitter. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, I'm Tyler Suiters. You're watching Clean Skies News.